To start with, I don't know what to say. So please understand that when I say thank you, it doesn't begin to convey the appreciation I feel for the feedback and comments on these videos. I have noticed a bit of a trend in the comments relating to some foundational topics I skipped. First, my apologies for that. It's been difficult to try and judge the audience when first starting out. Some places I went too deep, and others I skipped like they were obvious. So, thanks to the people who yanked the reins and pulled me back to the real world. That's exactly what I needed. I have a few videos in the works, one explaining what I mean by the term iPhone moment, another is on the actual networking structures and the problem areas SIG might run into as they move into this new infrastructure. I've gone back to the drawing board on them as I don't want to make the same mistake again. I'll try to get one of those out this weekend, so keep an eye out for those in the next few days. Today, I wanted to focus on the feedback about foundation building. This one's going to test my editing and effects skills. Can't believe it was only a week ago that I downloaded the video editor and started down this road. Time flies. What I'm going to share in this video is the way I visualize things and the way I bucketize them. This might or might not work for you. Please feel free to take this as nothing more than a guideline, a way to frame the conversations that we'll be having into the future about these technical topics. First, we need to define the functions that make up a service. This could be an MMO, it could be YouTube, it doesn't matter. The functionality of delivering a service is the same. I'm going to exclude items that don't relate to our core area of interest, however, as spending time on logging and authentication, maybe if you're interested in those, we can talk about them down the road. But for right now, I'm just going to lump those together in management tasks. And now, as always with me, here come the charts. The first piece of the puzzle is the data store. We're not going to be able to do much if we can't store information. Then we need that management service I was talking about. This will be the foundation of everything. The goal of this service is to enable the functions of the infrastructure. It may be monolithic and have all data being processed by it and transiting it. Or it can be a management process and not in the direct data path. We have a monolith today. However, SIG has made it clear that they are building toward a more distributed system. Here we get to the communication functions, otherwise known as the replication layer. The goal here is simply to provide paths for communication and holding of state. Next come the services. This is where the bulk of the work will be done. Finally, we arrive at the network, my home, where all external communication is handled. It's important to understand that this is a functional diagram. So multiple functions can be done in one place, or all of them can be distributed out. That's what the architecture does. It takes the requirements and turns them into a method of operation. Then, engineers take that and start building the widgets, and finding out why the architects are stupid and it isn't going to work. Then comes the meeting they all have with lots of buzzwords being thrown around, followed by 3 people huddled in a cube finding a solution that the buzzword gaggle takes credit for. Sorry, my neurosis slipping out. Let me try that a different way. I don't think even SIG knows where this is going to end up in a few years. I do think they have a solid plan and architecture, but even that will change as they move forward. And I don't have access to what's defined internally today, so please take this as a generic example where we'll talk about how SIG might make use of technologies and try to plug in what we know about where it makes sense. This is the hardest area for me to address. The reality is that the intention, plan, and terminology have all been shifting over time. Not in a bad way. That's how designing something works. However, it does mean that the community as a whole understands things based on when they heard them. A lot of us in the tech industries are used to this. We see it every day in our jobs. When I meet with people, if we haven't been in contact for a while, the very first thing I have to do is make sure that the terms we're going to use in our conversation are mutually understood to be the same thing. This is the most important part of technical communication. One wrong word can set a conversation back a long way if understanding of its meaning isn't the same between all parties involved. Server. A server is what we have today. It's a monolithic single entity that is running each shard. A shard is a complete set of infrastructure required to run Star Citizen, Star System Server. This is what would fill the role of our current setup. Stanton is a single system. However, rather than monolithic, it will use the new architecture. Then Pyro would be effectively a copy of it. Instance. A process given authority by the server to manage all activity within a defined scope of the universe. These instances would be nestable and eventually dynamic based on player location and load. Adapter. Adapters are common in networking. Not sure about the software dev side of things, but this is the term I used for connecting to various external systems. I always like examples, so let's take the PES rollout and try to fit it into this context. PES, the foundation of the replication layer. Before you can have a replication layer, you need a method to send information and the downstream servers to receive it, and vice versa. So the first step was to isolate the entity management in the monolithic server stack. This would pave the way for the replication layer split. The process here is create the communication path, hook the server into the path, turn off the current method of populating the universe, watch 3.18 implode as they figure out how to do this at scale, recover, learn lots, and get ready to test pulling the rest of the entity processing out of the current server. The next step is frankly a big one. Once the replication layer split happens, because PES is ready for it, they can start spinning up instances to take control of static areas of the universe. I'm sure they will have some functions that are still within the old monolithic service. But from our perspective, this should mean that with the replication layer in place, an instance can crash and we just have to wait for a new one to come up. In other high availability applications, they have a set of standby instances ready to take up the job of any that don't pass the health checks. From here, they should be able to clone the Stanton system server and configure it to be Pyro, and, world peace follows.